everyone, welcome back to Poplet Book Club. I want to start out this video by apologizing for it being so late. I had a lot going on in October, including getting married, so it was pretty hard to find time to read. But I have finished the book now, and we can finally get into it. Our October book was Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie. Like I said in my last video, this is my first Agatha Christie novel, and I quite enjoyed it. I haven't watched any adaptations of any of her other works either yet, except for maybe a play adaptation of it, and there were none when I was in grade school. But it's easy to see how she has made such an impact on the mystery genre. Many mystery tropes were created by her, and others were made famous through her examples. Death on the Nile, the 17th novel in the Poirot series, has no shortage of tropes, but that doesn't mean that it's predictable. Agatha is the queen of crime for good reason. She wrote stories that felt familiar, yet were complicated enough to draw you in and hold your attention until the very end. Plus, unlike most other types of fiction, you can read these stories out of order. While the detective may have a linear life, each case is its own story and creates a connection between yourself and the cast of characters. Death on the Nile starts out with 12 short chapters that introduce the cast of characters, and then picks up in Egypt, where everyone has gone for vacation. While the whole cast does get mixed up in the investigation, there are three main characters whose drama drives the story forward: Lynette Doyle, Simon Doyle, and Jackie de Bellefour. Lynette is a 20-year-old heiress to a very wealthy American family who has spent many years in England and has recently bought an estate in a small town there. Lynette generally means well and can be kind and generous, but she also uses her charm and influence to get what she wants. Jackie is her best friend. Jackie's family used to be quite well off, but has since lost a lot of their fortune. So this South Carolina native is now struggling to stay afloat in England. Simon is the man who has become a wedge between these two young women. Jackie and Simon were seemingly in love and engaged to be married, but Simon was also down on his luck, so Jackie had the idea for Lynette to give him a job as her land agent. Lynette does agree to try it out, but upon meeting him decides that she wants to have him for herself. Only a few months later, he's left Jackie and married Lynette instead. Once everyone meets up in Egypt, we see that Lynette and Simon are a happy couple, but Jackie, who just so happens to be on the honeymoon trip as well, is practically hysterical with jealousy. Poirot has also decided to go on this vacation voyage and begins keeping tabs on the group. After a day at the hotel, the group boards the Karnak and embarks on their boat trip down the Nile. There we also find an old acquaintance of Poirot's, an MI5 agent who has been tasked with finding a known but unnamed killer. Thus, the cast is placed in close, somewhat tense proximity for the foreseeable future, and the real mystery begins. As far as story goes, the plot in this novel is quite intricate, which is a staple of Christie's work. There are plenty of clues, both physical and verbal, that both help and confuse the reader. The cast of characters is fairly big, which provides lots of opportunities for suspicion and evidence. While we do get a general feel for what each of the characters is like, I do wish Christie had gotten more in depth with some of them. Not knowing a lot about a person means it's easier to be suspicious of them, so it does help create red herrings and secondary plots. At the same time, after the crimes are fully explained, I was still left with some questions about motives. The general why was understandable enough, but some actions didn't feel totally justified without knowing more of their backstory. As for the eponymous setting, it was intriguing, but did little besides provide an excuse for everyone to be in the same place at the same time. From what I've read online, this is all pretty typical for an Agatha Christie story, with the plot focused on creating a convoluted, clever puzzle, while character development and setting evocation take a back seat. As crime writing has evolved, the latter two have become more prominent, but if you're interested the most in unraveling the mystery in this type of story, then Christie is a great author for you. I'm going to move on to discussion questions now, so please answer these and give any of your other thoughts in the comments below. What are your thoughts on Lynette as a person? Is she as generous and nice as some say she is, or is she more proud and manipulative? Lynette and Jackie start out the story as great friends, but end up very far from that. Do you think they were ever very close to each other, Or was there something false about their friendship from the beginning? When Poirot first talks to Jackie, he is insistent that there is always a moment at which one can decide to quit their course of action instead of proceeding with malicious plans. Do you agree with Poirot? When do you think that moment was for Jackie? Poirot's friend, Colonel Reese, plays co-detective in this novel. Do you feel that his presence and actions added to the story, and how so? How do you feel about the way the story ends? Were you surprised? And were you satisfied with how things turned out for each character? There have been a few adaptations of Death on the Nile. Which ones have you seen, and how do they compare to each other and to the book? Why do you think some changes were made, and how do you think they fit? It looks like the theatrical release of the new adaptation has been pushed back again to December 18th. I will probably wait to see this until it is either streaming online or on DVD, but I am interested in watching it. Just from looking at the trailer and the cast list, it seems like there are quite a few changes to the storyline, but that also may not affect the main events very much. If nothing else, it will be fun to see Gal Gadot play the part of Lynette. Overall, I enjoyed this book, and I hope that you did too. If you would still like to read it, you can find the book in our catalog, and you can also find digital copies in Overdrive and Hoopla. We also have some film adaptations in our catalog, so make sure you check out those as well. If you're interested in other murder-themed goodness, you can check out our most recent Legacy event, where author Joe Kimball gave a talk about the murders at the Congdon Mansion in Duluth. It was my first time hearing that story, and it was well worth the listen. Links to this book and that event video are in this video's description, along with our link to the next book, The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. Thanks for watching this video, and until the next one, happy reading!